Supreme Court heard oral arguments Monday challenging race-conscious admissions policies at the University of North Carolina and Harvard University. Justice Clarence Thomas pressed Harvard's attorney, Seth Waxman, about different approaches to admissions that would eschew affirmative action in its current form. Thomas brought up a criteria which he claimed would increase socioeconomic diversity. These cases could spell the end of affirmative action as it's been employed in past decades, both in public and private colleges and universities. Many have expressed worry that the gutting of race-conscious admissions in its current form would yield less diversity in academic institutions and impair social and economic progress, particularly for historically underrepresented and marginalized people.
Mr. Waxman, the petitioner argues that over 80% that actually you do have available a race-neutral approach that would yield different but excellent results. And the argument includes the fact that, at least as they argue, that you're over 80% wealthy students, that's not diverse, and that over 30% or 30% or so of a class is made up of ALDC students. And that if you were to lower those numbers, you could achieve far more diverse results without, along socioeconomic lines. And I don't think it's arguable that Harvard is socioeconomically diverse, but at least it doesn't appear that way. But it seems that, and that would not have a constitutional problem if you did it socioeconomically. And I'd like you simply to address their argument.
Yes, thank you. First of all, the numbers that my friend is throwing around are not, in fact, the numbers that actually reflect, for example, socioeconomic diversity at Harvard, where, as it stands now, 20% of all matriculants pay nothing, 70% of underrepresented minorities pay nothing, and well over half of all applicants get substantial financial aid. But as to your point about race-neutral alternatives, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justice Thomas, but I think this is what you're asking me about. We have exquisitely detailed metrics in this case with respect to race-neutral alternatives and findings and testimony with respect to the so-called ALDCs, which is an acronym that I think I was actually literally present at the birth of, which is a preference for children of alumni, children of faculty and staff, athletes, and other people who have found themselves on the dean's interest list. The data in this case shows that if race were eliminated, you couldn't consider race, and you also could give none of those preferences, the racial diversity of the matriculating class would go down. The representation of African Americans, if you just stop considering race, would go from 14% to 6%. But if you also stop considering ALDCs, it would go to 5%.